Welcome back, family. This is another Heel Talk segment, and today's conversation is one I think you're going to feel deep in your spirit. We're talking about the versions of me, not just who I am right now, but who I've been, who I'm becoming, and what it really takes to grow into the next version of yourself. I got the Healing Squad in the building, voices you know and love, and some you're meeting for the first time, all bringing their truth, their stories, and their hearts to the table. In part one, we're diving into the hardest parts of outgrowing your old self, what it means to make peace with change, and how to keep going when the journey feels lonely. This is real talk. This is healing talk, and I promise you, there are some gems in here you're going to want to hold on to. So grab your tea or your coffee, take a deep breath, and let's take a step into this conversation together. Let's get it. Okay, welcome back. This is another Heel Talk segment. And every time we do these segments, it's so special for me because part of providing these tangible resources for my audience, please share, like, subscribe, and comment, is that I get to have fun with these individuals as well because they really do inspire me. These Heel Talk segments is always about bringing healing conversations, right? And real conversations, bringing them together to have some heel talk. I've wrote out several of these. I did one that wrote out last week with Ruth. Yeah, stories that heal. Y'all check that out. It's doing really well. Today, I wanted to bring the Healing Squad together to talk about the versions of me. And not just me personally, just of we, right? Who I am and who I'm becoming. We talk a lot on this channel about self development, personal development, how to heal, how to get past things. And I love all that because I love bringing the messengers. But I think the other part of it is showing, being able to show the audience as much as that we're telling you to reach for vulnerability and find that space so you can heal. I think it's important for the Healing Squad and the people who come through to role model that as well. So today's a little more personal in the sense of like more reflective, but I got three amazing guests who I feel are going to do their thing on this segment. And of course, I have Mr. Easy Equity in the building. I have Ruth, Tea Time with Ruth. And yeah, we have a new Healing Squad member in the building, and you're going to see more of them. And that is Bryan up in this space. So y'all come into the room real quick. Come into the room with me. You know the topic. You know what we're talking about, right? The versions of me, who I am, who I'm becoming. I put five questions out there, and I don't know if we're going to get through all of them, but you know what? I want to start with the first, right? And the first one says, "What has been one of the hardest parts about outgrowing an old version of yourself?" Let's just start with that one. That's a little appetizer for the Healing Squad to tap. Who wants to go first? You know what we doing. Welcome to the room.
Yeah, that's a hard question to be honest. Really outgrowing my old self has, if I'm always going to be transparent and I talk about transparency all the time, the old version of me always wants to surface again. Not being the person that I used to be, hanging around the people that I hang around, building a circle of people that no longer serve me any purpose now. And being able to just push through that has been just a reflection and a challenge for me, but I'm growing in the peace of it all, knowing that God does send people in your life, whether it's for a season or a lifetime. And in this season that I am in, it seems like it just has been a season for lessons that I had to learn and repeat those lessons over and over again in order for me to be able to take off and go into another direction and surround myself with people who are going in the same direction, who are going in the healing direction and wanting to be a better version of themselves. So every day I have to die daily to myself. I'm learning how to die daily to the old Ruth and know that the new Ruth is a better version of herself, knowing that I'm making a 180. I'm not making a 360 in my life anymore, but just being able to know that the old Ruth is gone and you're bringing forth the new Ruth who's going to be a better, just not for myself, but the people that see me, the people that I surround myself with, and the people that are to come, and people that see me walking by and they know me by my name, and even in rooms that I don't even know exist, they know that this is a new version of Ruth, and we're excited to see the healing, the healthy version of me.
Hmm.
I definitely when Ruth was talking about seasons, having people for that season and knowing what season you're in. That is, I definitely echo that. A big part of outgrowing the old version of yourself is finding new friends, finding new people in your network. That is like so important, mainly because I think people really underestimate the value of surrounding yourself with people that are fully invested in you, that fully believe what you want to do. A lot of people, you have people around you or friends, even people in your network that are not completely supportive of what you're doing or what you're trying to do. Like, I'm starting my clothing brand right now. And for some people, I had been working on this since about last year, and when I would bring the idea up to people, just being in the idea stage, I would have friends be like, "Oh, that's kind of a stupid idea. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you shouldn't." And it's like, no, my heart wants to do it, but I know once I do it, I'm going to be a different person, and that different person might not be your friend anymore. So, yeah, that's definitely one of the hardest parts of it.
Yeah, I feel that, Brian and Ruth. I think like for me, the hardest person, like hardest part of outgrowing like your old self is people still want you to stay in that box. People still want you to be there, to be that like the person that drank too much, the person that partied too much, the person that talked to too many girls, the person that did a lot, the person like to be on all honesty they laughed at instead of laughed with. And then when you stop being that, it becomes difficult because then they want you to come back. Hey, let's go out. Let's do this. Oh, and they're trying to invite you all the things that you're no longer in. And even when you're in relationships, I think you have to understand that my growth doesn't necessarily mean my partner's growth. So if you're in a consistent journey of growing, your partner might not be growing at the same pace, and that creates dissidence, interruptions, arguments and all these things because you're no longer doing those things that you used to do, that the things that used to serve to be mutual beneficial. So now when I'm reading and I'm writing and I'm doing all these things instead of playing video games and all this other stuff, it doesn't match. And I think like the biggest thing, like how I gain peace with that is like I've been going on like my basketball journey of just really recognizing all the skills and lessons basketball has taught me. And I was like, I didn't have a left hand, right hand dominant, but when I got a left hand and I can dribble and shoot with both hands, I'm not going back to just being right hand dominant. I'm not going back not to have a left hand. And I was just like, no, I'm going to be me unapologetically. I'm not moving backwards in that stage. That makes literally no sense. When I got my jumper was wet, I'm not going to start missing on purpose just because I worked on my skills and gained this jumper. It's like I'm not going uh, back with that. And so like just like it doesn't make sense to act like you don't have basketball skills, I'm not going to act like I don't have the skills that I've grown on my personal journey and through life. I'm not faking that.
I love that, y'all. It made me think of a couple things, and this is kind of like I didn't add the second part of this first question, which is, how did you make peace with the change, right? And y'all said different things from just the self-discovery to the friendship circles, even to the partner. That hit home for me, Michael, right? Because our partners ain't always on the same timeline as us in terms of growth and evolution. It makes me think of the change piece, the second part to that question. It makes me think of like one of the outgrowing spaces that I felt was when my mother transitioned. And when she transitioned, a lot of anger that I had that actually developed passion, if that makes sense. It's anger over here, but when I let that bad boy out over here, it's all passion and people want it. It was also like it had a caveat, which was like strong leadership, and that anger was really connected to that. And when my mom's transitioned during COVID, all that anger left with her. Same with the passion, same with that strong leadership. I was like half a shell of myself. Now, while I was going through that, right, and there was an outgrowing in that space, and I didn't know that at the time. I know that shit now, but at the time, it felt like punishment. You gonna take mom's and my best traits,
Mm.
right? But see, my mom always used to tell me, not that I'm like walking around the house smacking my kids around. That's not the kind of anger I'm talking about, right? The anger that I'm speaking of is frustration, right? Is probably childhood trauma, all those things that you shove down that formulates into these feelings that fall into a pattern of just anger. They don't go nowhere else, right? But then they pour into the passion. And as I was thinking of this question, the piece with that, I struggled with that piece. Now I accept it because I've grown with it. And I realized that I had to let go of that anger because it was a hindrance to me. And that was the message my mom's was giving me for a
Mm.
long ass time. Once you can let go of that anger, your blessings are really going to, like, she used to say all these amazing things to me. She used to also tell me, hang your anger on the invisible tree in front of your house. Do not bring that stuff inside the house, right? Because what happens outside, your family does not have to deal with that unless they invite it in and say, how's it going? What are you going through, right? So I'm thinking of that, and just from my example, right, the making peace with that change, man, that took about 2 or 3 damn years for me to make peace with that, right? Because it was peace with accepting that my number one person was gone, and that number one person, I felt intentionally took my anger with her because she was like, you don't need this no more, right? Because the big part of why she was in my life, like a big presence beyond being Mom Dukes, is she knew the words that nobody else could say to me to make me feel different. So in saying that, right, trying to put it in space of like making peace with that, how I made peace with that, just to answer the question, and I'll bring it back to y'all, right, is that I had to just fully accept the shit. Like I had to let go of the anger. I had to evolve. I wasn't the mayor of the community anymore. For years I ran camps, 300, 400 people at one spot, right? Everybody looking at you. That was all gone. And then you move to Colorado, and I believe the mountains of Colorado, the evolution and acceptance of that evolution of self really allowed me to accept the shit. And now I can look at it, it doesn't feel as painful as I might be sharing it in my words, right? So I land my plane on that one. For y'all, how do you make peace with that change?
I'm working through that, to be honest. I've had to reflect on every single relationship that I've been in. And this last one, like you, Adam, like I was angry. I was angry at the fact that you let me down, at the fact that I thought we were going somewhere and we were going absolutely nowhere. And trying to just put those pieces together and know that the only way that I can truly make peace and continue to make peace is just forgiveness. Just forgiving how I may have mishandled, how she may have mishandled me, or in other relationships, how they have mishandled me. Just being at peace with that and knowing that this too shall pass and that this is just a point in my life where I can see it for what it is and know that never to return back to these same situations because it just causes too much chaos. And being at peace can sometimes be in a place where, again, you're just reflecting on life, reflecting on the choices that you could have made better, the things that you could have done better for yourself. And peace for me now, as I continue to walk this out, is completely loving Ruth and Ruth alone. No one can love me like I can love me. You can add to my love, but you can't subtract from my love because my love came with this hard work, sweat, tears, anger, frustration, disappointment, misunderstanding. But now when I sit in it some days, it's just quietness and stillness. And that's where the peace will continue to come day by day.
I think it's really hard to make peace with change, especially when you're not ready for the change and the change is kind of it's a force in your life that's moving, right? Like you can feel your life, whatever old version of yourself, you can feel that self dying almost and you becoming something different. Um, Making peace with it for me, sometimes I don't even make peace with it. I'm gonna be very honest, but it's a more of a recognition that if I feel sad, I'm mourning my old self or I'm mourning what used to be. But I do accept the new change. I think a big part of making peace is setting your new expectations and holding true to them. Whether it's in your personal life or career, you'll experience something. You'll be like, nah, I used to go back and forth with people, but I'm a new person now. I don't do that. I take the high road, or I'll handle it this way. And holding to those new expectations is just, I feel like, is a great way to find peace in yourself because you can see your new version and your old version tugging for that leadership in your life. So yeah, I definitely believe in setting good expectations and sticking to your guns, holding true to it.
Yeah, I feel that, Brian, and I love what all y'all have said. When I first saw this question, what instantly comes up when Adam, especially when you were talking, I was like, that's a grief cycle. That is denial, that's anger, that's bargaining, that's depression. Then there's acceptance. And what I think is like the lonely part when you're angry and in denial, like you're triggered, right? And we know when you're triggered, we want to talk about mental health, you're not using your prefrontal lobe cortex. You're not using that. You're not really thinking, you're just reacting to anything. So you might have people in your life for you that can support you, but you can't feel it or nor can you see it. You're burning hot, rightfully so, because any kind of loss, even if you're losing that old version of yourself, that old version of yourself played a big part in your life thus far. It got you through some trials and tribulations. And there are some good times and some bad times with that old version. But the cool thing is you get to become somebody else. So once you get to acceptance, you in a sense you have to move forward, but it doesn't mean that anything that happens can't try to pull you back into that grief cycle again. And so I would say this week I was invited to be the old Mike Sykes, to be just it's Leo season, lion, straight fire. Like I was invited to be that. Um and I wanted to because I didn't want to feel. I wanted to numb. I wanted to yell. I wanted to transfer this energy that I was feeling in a way I didn't want to sit with it, Ruth, just like you said. I didn't want to be still. And I had to. I forget. I think it's Lao Tzu. I think hopefully I'm saying her name right. But she had this quote that said, "Can you stand in the mud long enough to like, in a sense, let the settlement settle? You can't move. It's too cloudy. The water's too cloudy. You got to sit there and be still. And then when the sediment has settled to the ground, the water's clear, then you take your next step." And like that's lonely. That's lonely as hell because oftentimes you don't got nobody that's truly experiencing everything that you're experiencing in that moment. So it's really about taking a breath. Like you said, Rue, breathing. And also knowing like everybody ain't for you. And that's hard. And you can't go back to that old person because you know what that old person used to do. That old self. Like, oh, he's cool, but that dude was insecure. He talked to girls because he wanted to be accepted, but he didn't accept himself. So it's more like, all right, Mike, what do you need? Pour back into yourself, have those different conversations, and now be intentional with your next step.
All right, I felt like let me let that one sit for a second. There was some goodness up in that one, Michael. I appreciate that, sir. And it's a good leeway to like the next thought question. And we all know this. Sometimes those growth journeys are solo dolo journeys, right? Like you going through them by yourself, right? And as much as you have your community and support, either on the outside and even sometimes in the inside of your bubble, that growth as and then like what you said, Bryan, about like you could feel the change, right? And the tug between those two things, right? And in saying that, as you're going through that growth journey, as you might lose a few folks. You might lose a few people in the midst of it because you evolved, and that means you evolved either past them, right? You evolved to a space that they're not at. It ain't even like you're not better than them, right? You're just in a whole different plane and they're in a whole different space. So in saying that, right, as you're becoming a version of yourself, creating distance between you and others, how do you handle that? How do you handle maintaining those friendships and releasing people? Because I think that's another tug of war we're talking about here.
I guess I'll dive in again. Um, it feels very lonely. I can honestly say that I never thought that I would get to this place where it feels lonely. A lot of people say, like, well, you have your family. Just because I have my family, just because I live with my family, doesn't mean that I'm alone, that I don't feel alone. And looking at the people that are in my life, like I'm an extrovert and an introvert, and now I feel like I'm more so an introvert now after this change. I don't like that many people anymore. I can honestly say that. I just don't like that many people. I don't like being around a lot of people. I don't like going out. They be like, "Hey, let's go out." No, Ruth's not going out. I'm cool. I'm cool sitting in my bed watching a show or just sitting and doing absolutely nothing. But it is lonely. I never thought when people say like this journey, being on a healing journey is lonely, it's lonely, it's messy, it's it's just digging in those trenches, like Mike, like you said, like sitting in it in the mud, just letting it settle and just feeling those thoughts, like you said, Bryan, like just feeling what it feels like and just knowing that it's helping you. But it's putting a distance between you and the people that refuse to heal. They want to stay in their mess. They want to stay in their trauma. They just want to stay content in the chaos when you yourself have been in the chaos. Well, let me say, me, myself, have been in the chaos. I have been through the trauma, and I refuse to stay where I'm at. I refuse to stay this person who cheated. I refuse to stay the person that was a liar. I refuse to think of myself as who my daddy was. I refuse to think of myself what my past looked like. I refuse to think of myself as being sexually like touched as a kid. I refuse all those things. And if I have to stand here alone, I will be here alone and create distance between me and other people so I can continue to heal, so I can help somebody else heal who's going through the same journey, but at a different time.